All right, man, it is Saturday morning around 11 a.m. Central Standard Time, which must mean Adrien Broner's been arrested for something. Let's talk about Adrien Broner, man. Dude is wild, but I'm telling you, there's good and bad with Adrien Broner. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. We're going to talk some boxing because right about now, with all this stuff going on in the world, that's about all anybody can do is talk about this boxing, okay? Because there ain't nothing really going to go on. There's not a lot of fights happening, not any basketball, not any, is no sports, really not a lot of entertainment going on because all this stuff going on. So I'm out here reading the news and just checking up on boxing, getting ready to watch some fights today. More than likely, I'm going to have a rewatched up on a Patreon page today because I'm going to be watching a lot of fights with nothing else going on, a lot of recorded fights. So I run across an article where it says that Adrien Broner has been arrested for a DUI. And my thought was, in a whole long article about what a waste of life he is, what a waste, not a waste of life, what a waste of a career he is, and how, he's just, basically painted Adrien Broner as this big old failure. And I just think to myself, man, that, it's really easy to point the finger at Adrien Broner because, quite honestly, man, Adrien Broner can behave a bit of a fool. And that's been the situation throughout his whole career. You've seen him do things like, making videos while he's in the restroom at Wendy's. He, is getting in trouble with, with women. He had some big lawsuit that he had an issue with because, he might have touched somebody the way he wasn't supposed to touch him. Other instances, I remember one time he, he literally got put in custody because his car was shot up. Like, what exactly did he do? It's his car that was shot up. A lot of people believe it was, Adrien Broner that did it himself to bring more attention to him. But you get the point, man. It's just constantly with Adrien Broner. There's something going on with him. But and so it doesn't surprise me that this is the issue, that this would happen. It's definitely not a good thing to happen. It's, not good for anybody to be out there on the streets, under the influence of something and driving a car. So, that is definitely a bad thing. If it's the case that he was, that happened. By the way, I always say if it's the case, because he was arrested for it, that doesn't mean that it's going to wind up being that he's convicted for it. But anyway, you guys know all about this guy's, I guess it's safe to say checkered past, but his career is also, his boxing career is also very, very checkered, man. Well, it is, I think people put his personal life, too much of his personal life on his head as it relates to his boxing career, because Adrien Broner, for me, and I'm looking at it from, what would somebody walk in if you start your career and you expect to achieve something? And then at the end of your career, you look back on what you've achieved and you look at it from the viewpoint of when you began, right? Would you consider it a good thing? Would you have considered it a bad thing when you started? So Adrien Broner, for me, I would say that his career has been very successful in the boxing ring, has been very successful. I do believe, is a very, very good fighter. I do not believe that Adrien Broner at any point in his career was a great fighter. And because there's just so many things, well, I won't say so many things. Adrien Broner is no Terrence Crawford, despite the fact that people, because he was supposed to be the next Mayweather when Floyd Mayweather, I think he was still at HBO at the same time that Floyd might have been at HBO, or maybe Floyd was at Showtime by that time. But regardless, when Adrien Broner was fighting on HBO, he got a lot of publicity for being the next Floyd Mayweather Jr., but he was never really good enough of a boxer really to earn that reputation. Unlike a guy who's like the flip side of it, which is a Terrence Crawford, who really does have the skills and the ability, the mentality to be to be a great fighter like Floyd Mayweather Jr., if not all the way up to snuff with Floyd. I mean, that's to say that somebody's as good as Floyd Mayweather, man. It's, it's not a lot of people in the history of boxing that you could without a doubt say that about. But Terrence Crawford is an excellent fighter, and Adrien Broner was just never that level of fighter. Adrien Broner has never been the level of fighter of I don't think he's ever been the level of fighter of a Keith Thurman. I don't think he was the level of a fighter of a definitely not an Errol Spence Jr. So when I look at what he's accomplished in his career versus what his true abilities are, what I believe his true abilities are, man, he made it a long way. He made a long way and a lot of money off of his abilities, but because of his mouthpiece, because of the type of stuff like we're talking about, like the stuff that we're talking about today, by being, well, two things actually. Number one, he acts a fool and he's fun. He's funny. He's charismatic. He's somebody that you want to hear. Like, you want to hear what Adrien Broner says. People want to see Adrien Broner fight. Despite all this nonsense going on with Adrien Broner, like all the nonsense, I still want to see him fight. I still want to see him come back and go to the ring. I'm still hoping that Adrien Broner's not retired, because he brings this tremendous entertainment factor around, even though it's kind of like sometimes you got to just close your eyes and be like, oh God, why did you say that, man? But still, it's always a discussion. And one of the great things about boxing, besides just watching alongside of watching great fights and great competition, is the conversations that you can have amongst boxing fans. Even like when we're looking at things like the Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury, Glovegate debate, man, for me as a boxing fan, quite honestly, it's kind of fun because it's the sport that I love. It allows me to interact in a excited manner with somebody else. You go back and forth. It's like a really big extended barbershop conversation. Shout out to Fred from Barbershop Conversations. Love the name. So Adrien Broner is kind of part of that. God, what's the best phenomenon in boxing where, you don't just have the stuff in the ring that's entertaining. You have the stuff that's outside the ring that's entertaining. And a lot of stuff that keeps your attention, but for Adrien Broner is really kind of, self-destructive is a good way, I think is a fair word to use on that. Now, on the other side of it though, Adrien Broner also brings something to the ring that a guy like a Terrence Crawford and a guy like I really wish more people would be willing to do. And that is Adrien Broner is absolutely positively willing to fight anybody. Okay. And he goes into fights where he doesn't, that there's a risk of him losing, but yet and still he still does it. Adrien Broner is a guy that probably, if he wanted to be the absolute best that he could have ever been, right, should have been at lightweight. If he could have found a way, either through being like a Bernard Hopkins type of having a Bernard Hopkins type of discipline with his weight, and just making sure that he's always exercising and he's eating right, that he's not taking anything in his body that is either going to slow down his metabolism or make him gain weight. And he could have stayed at 135 pounds. Man, he probably could have been a monster at 135 pounds. I have a hard time believing if Adrien Broner is still at 135 pounds, that there's guys like, he'd give guys a lot of fits down there at 135. Definitely guys like Jorge Linares and Jose Pedraza and even Richard Comey, the type of guys that a lot of the guys that held belts down there, a guy like Luke Campbell, man, I'll take Adrien Broner over those guys. Maybe not a Devin Haney, right? I don't think he'd beat a Devin Haney, but I think Devin Haney is a guy that's going to be at 140 and 147 that has, a bigger frame, but he was willing very much to get into those big fights with with larger guys. Like the ones that stand out to me most are obviously Mikey Garcia fight and the Sean Porter fight. Adrien Broner is willing to fight Sean Porter. but Terrence Crawford is not willing to fight Sean Porter. That says a lot about the mentality of Adrien Broner, man. And quite unfortunately, it does say a little something about the mentality of Terrence Crawford. But I wish, like, if there's two fighters that I could just combine into one, I promise you, man, I would meld the competitive nature of Adrien Broner and his willingness to take risks and take fights with the skill set of Terrence Crawford, and you could give it to either guy. If Terrence Crawford was willing and the type of person that was going to take his career into his own hands, was going to make his own decisions, you know, I mean, I'm sure he makes his own decisions, and be able to put himself, that kind of extroverted guy that can put himself in, you know, who can talk himself into fights and talk people into going to watch the fights and pay for the fights, man, Terrence Crawford would be on another planet. If Adrien Broner had the skill and could fight like Terrence Crawford, oh my God, he would be through the planet. But, you know, man, he'd be in the stratosphere right now, man. But unfortunately, you know, that's not the way the world works. We get Adrien Broner how Adrien Broner is. We get Terrence Crawford how Terrence Crawford is. Never the twain shall meet. But we get to enjoy the ride of Terrence Crawford in the ring. I've enjoyed the ride of Adrien Broner outside the ring, even though he might not from time to time. But it is what it is. You let me know what you think in the comment section. With that, I'm out. Peace.